Great. So we're currently recording this webinar. So if you miss anything or you just want to go back for some reference, then know that we are recording it and we'll be sharing the link out after this webinar is over. And if you could please remain muted while we're going through the presentation, that helps limit distractions. But we do have two opportunities in this webinar for questions and for you guys to actually share your knowledge. I know that there are a lot of people who are really a lot more experienced than either of us who can give some really great perspective on a few of these items. So we do have an opportunity scheduled in this webinar to do that. And here on this slide, I just shared where you guys are all coming from the RSVP that you guys did. So lots of people from San Francisco region, and the next one is the Sacramento region. So looks like we're all pretty nice and dispersed. So thank you all for making it here today, and we'll get started. So first of all, we just wanted to cover what the City Nature Challenge is, just in case there are a few of us who aren't familiar with it, and to just give you a little bit of context for why we're doing what we're doing. So it got started here in California, actually, in 2016. There were two cities initially that were in the challenge, and it was just San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles County. And they wanted to basically do this challenge to answer the question, who can observe the most nature out of those two cities? So that was the main goal, but they also wanted to start this as an effort to document the plants and animals for science in both of those cities, because urban areas are kind of forgotten when it comes to nature, but as you guys as California Naturalists know, you can find nature anywhere. So their goal was to really get people in urban environments more aware of the nature around them. And also just as having it as a challenge and makes it exciting, and they wanted to engage more people in these outdoor spaces. So it really took off, and just a few years later, over 250 cities internationally are now participating in a global City Nature Challenge. So this is all organized by the two originating organizations who started the San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles County cities. So that's the California Academy of Sciences and the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. So how it works, here in California, we have actually quite a few cities that are participating this year. So a lot of times the regions for the cities are a lot bigger than just the city itself. So you can see just by that first one, San Francisco Bay Area, you've got all the counties that are touching the Bay Area included in the San Francisco City Nature Challenge, and same goes for Sacramento region. So even if you aren't necessarily in San Francisco proper or Sacramento proper, you might actually be able to participate in a lot bigger region than you think. So it's really a lot of opportunity for you guys to get involved in a lot of different environments here in California. And I just wanted to note that I did get a couple of inquiries on starting cities in other locations in California. So I just wanted to include how it works. So the City Nature Challenge International is organized by those two originating organizations. So that's the California Academy of Sciences and Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. And they manage all 250 plus cities out there. And each of those cities has different partnering organizations that they work with to hold Bioblitzes and other events to help get the word out. So you can kind of see in this example here, for San Francisco, that's one region, one city, and then they work with different individual organizations to help sort of spread the word. So here in California, this is a little bit of a busy slide, but you can see how it's structured a little bit. So if you are interested in having a BioBlitz or any other sort of event, you might be considered a partnering organization to your city. So that's why we encourage you to find out who those partnering organizations might already be. So they might already be a part of this whole effort, but if not, then you can be a new partnering organization, in which case you would want to get in touch with your city organizers. So if you notice here, you start reading all the different partnering organizations. This isn't a complete list. There's more listed on the City Nature Challenge website. We here at California Naturalist began to see a few familiar names. So here we have almost in every region or every city in California, at least one California Naturalist partner or emerging partner organization that's participating in their City Nature Challenge. And we kind of thought, I wonder if, I bet that there's a lot of naturalists out there who are also participating in some capacity to the City Nature Challenge. In which case, if they're participating, we want to know, because we're part of the California Naturalist statewide program, and if we can really help to champion the work of our naturalists, that just helps our network of naturalists grow stronger. And we can say, look at the impact that they're having in the state of California. So we really are hoping this year that we can harness the power of our naturalists, both to let us know what they're already doing and see if we can encourage our naturalists to plug into a partnering organization for their city. So here's kind of what our idea for this year is going to be for our involvement with the City Nature Challenge as the UC California Naturalist program. So we want to encourage you guys to do any of the following things that are listed here. It can be as simple as simply just observing, going out and making observations and uploading. If you're doing that, that's awesome, and we want to know about it. And if we can get if you're not necessarily, you can't get out there and observe that weekend, but you have some time during that window of identification and you get on there and ID stuff, that's awesome too. We definitely want to know about that. And if you want to even take it to the next level, we would love to see if you're organizing any amount of people to participate in the City Nature Challenge this year, whether it's simply your family or a small group of friends that you like to go out and do stuff with, or you organize a lunchtime break with your coworkers to walk around the business park and take pictures, or if you go above and beyond even to organizing a community BioBlitz, either with your California Naturalist partner organization or some other organization, doesn't matter, we want to know about it. So what we're going to be doing this year is after the challenge is over, so that last April 27th date, we will send out an email to you guys, just the people who RSVP'd for this webinar. We'll send you an email, so it'll contain a link for a short form. It was just about as long as that RSVP, And we'd love for you guys to fill it out. It'll just have some info about whether you had a Bioblitz or not, how many observations you had, what your iNaturalist username is. So that way we can kind of track you guys and see what you're doing and share out those results so that we know the impact of our California naturalists. So with that, we're gonna just leap into kind of the knowledge sharing part of this webinar so that when you go out there, you're better prepared to either just simply participate by observing, or again, by taking it to the next level and hosting a Bioblitz. So I'll say for this portion, taking photos for iNaturalist, you can use these tips both on a personal level for your own picture taking, but we also am encouraging you to take these tips and use them for when you are co-organizing a Bioblitz. So these are helpful to teach other people as well. So we'll go into each one individually here. So the first one that's pretty important to the City Nature Challenge before you even go and take any photos is knowing that what the City Nature Challenge really prefers is for everyone to take wild organism photos. So it's awesome if you are walking around outside your office building and you see a bush that you just don't know about and you want to identify. That's awesome. Do that. That's how you learn about different kinds of plants and animals. But the thing is, if you do know that it's captive or cultivated, make sure you mark that on your observation because only the wild organisms are going to be able to get to research grade observation. And ultimately, the research grade observations are what's going to be useful for science. So if you're a teacher on this webinar right now, definitely discourage your students from taking photos of their friends, right? Or taking pictures of maybe their dog, or if you happen to go to a zoo animals, those are pretty obviously captured organisms, so avoid those. When it comes to plants, it is a little trickier to know if things are cultivated or not. So just use your discretion and do your best.
Sarah, Crystal Venezuela asked about plants that were placed in a restoration site.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think I would have to double check on that. My guess would be that since it's from a nursery and it was originally cultivated, you might put that in there because the wild organisms we are mostly looking for if it was nature got it to be planted there. So if that makes sense.
This is Claire from Grassroots. I was told by somebody if we know that they're offspring of plants that were installed, if they're seeding themselves or spreading rhizomatously, that we can include those species as wild.
Yes, definitely. So if humans did not have anything to do with whether or not the plant got there, then I feel like it could be counted as wild. So yeah, I would definitely consider that a wild organism because it got there on its own. So going into taking photos, it's really good. This seems obvious to most people, but get to know your camera a little bit first. If you kind of are a little less familiar on how things work when it comes to focusing and being sure you know exposure, that really helps your image quality. And I put lenses on here too because for your smartphone, they make really cool clip-on lenses that you can use to help take really macro level photos. Not saying that you need to do that, but definitely consider some other tools that might help your camera take better photos, and make sure that we know exactly what it is that we're looking for, because there are a couple of tips here. So this one is really a cool photo. It looks like there isn't much in terms of nature here. Maybe you got some plants. It's kind of hard to tell what's really going on. So what you're gonna do, what this photo actually is important for, is capturing the broader picture, right? You kind of get a sense of what environment this organism is. Maybe you guys can even see it right now if you have really good eyesight and are tuned into this stuff. But you kind of also use these as to help you when, especially if you're taking pictures of some animal that might run away, taking something from far back, and as you get closer and closer to your organism, you get more and more detailed photos. So you gradually get close enough to be able to see some distinguishing features, but if your organism runs away in that time, then you at least have some evidence of an organism to use. So you kind of get a bigger picture of the environment that this organism is in. That's an important thing to add to your observation. But then that detailed one is also important. So you're kind of creating, you're painting a picture for people who are helping to ID your photo. Focus is a really important tool. I know I struggle with this on my phone, is to get the focus down right. And it can be hard when you have a lot of things against you, like wind, or you know, the organism is moving like this little ladybug is, but it's really important to make sure that focus is good, because you might miss some identifying features. And focus on the right things, right? So, you know, it's good that you got some evidence. Sometimes you really have no choice, that's all you got. But that's why it's helpful to kind of take those zoomed out photos of the environment. And then as you get closer to the organism, just keep taking photos, because it helps you get the focus on the right thing down. And then this is also something that it seems obvious, but it is actually really a good thing to practice, is taking different angles. For different organisms, it might be really important to see different parts of it. So even though that Instagram-worthy photo might look beautiful, think about if you might be trying to see the whole animal or the whole plant. Here too, you might miss some identifying features if you only take a certain photo of it. So again, reiterating that point there. And then again, seems obvious, but for newer iNaturalist users, you might have in your Bioblitz, where can you find things? So looking for different places under logs safely, of course, what might be sources of food for animals, tracks even. So finding the right place where that organism might even live, and look up. Honestly, we get stuck at the ground sometimes. Maybe there might be a cool lichen in a tree that you totally missed. So, and looking down here, like in the tide pools, is really helpful. So depending on your environment, those tricks are important. And also reminding people to be safe while they're doing it. That poison oak can be a really common safety item to address. So making sure that's in your kind of overall Bioblitz talk. And I know sometimes I can really get carried away and I'll see something on a cliffside or something that's, you know, maybe a little precarious to get a close-up photo of, but just making sure that people are aware of their surroundings is really important when taking photos too. So Here's kind of one of the last things I'll say about taking photos is on your phone, it's easy. You can have your geolocation tagged on your photos, which if you're not sure if that is on for you, you can double check on your settings. You can help other people double check as well. But if you're taking a photo with a digital camera, then it doesn't necessarily record your coordinates with the photo. So here's a tip for that is if you're taking digital photos, just take one photo. It doesn't have to even be of an organism, but you can just take a photo of where you are at where you're observing, and then when you go to upload your photos on the computer, you can just reference that photo's location and use it for when you upload your digital photos. So yeah, just keeping that in mind when you're uploading is gonna be, it'll save you a lot of time. So with that, I'll wrap up the sort of photo taking session here before we move on to Bioblitz tips. In case people wanted to share some tips and had some questions, and then I'll pass it on to Elliot. So are there any questions or thoughts? Feel free to type it in the chat or unmute yourself.
I can start off with one. I can say I got a really cheap magnifier that I can put right on my phone. It just clips right on my phone, and I think I got it for $15. And that was great for photographing insects and some of the smaller plants and stuff. I really recommend having one of those if you can afford to make that purchase. It's a lot better than taking pictures through a hand lens.
Yeah, if you have if you're, again, a teacher and you have access to microscopes to use, that could be a really fun addition too. And Kathleen says, add something for scale. Yeah, that's a really good tip, especially for those smaller guys, to put like your hand in there or, you know, a dollar bill or a coin or something so you can see things better. Jim said, iNaturalist used to allow uploading of several photos at once. Now I have to add photos one at a time. Oh, if you're talking about on your phone, yeah, that for a single observation, you can add multiple photos, but you have to kind of go back and add each one. So I've also noticed that, and I haven't found a workaround other than putting them on my computer first. So if anyone has any comments on that, feel free. And Jessica said, if you can angle your shot as well. I remember, oh, I recommend taking photos of birds through your binoculars. Yes, I've definitely done that before too. And it's worked surprisingly well. The birds tend to fly away pretty quickly. So if you can get that, your lens lined up with the binocular lens in time, then it really works well.
They also, Sarah, they also make clips that kind of clip onto the back end of your binoculars too, and will hold your smartphone.
Oh.
My binoculars came with them, which I thought was a pretty nifty
so cool.
feature. I'm yet to find a universal fit one though, so I guess I'll keep my eyes out for that.
Yeah. Okay, I asked about a net to catch butterflies. Yes, you can definitely use that. If you have particular animals need collecting permits, so I would definitely do some research before you go to a certain place and just start catching stuff. But if you have, for instance, like a pond that you can get some macroinvertebrates, go for it. I went to a Bioblitz that had recordings of bat sounds, and that counts as an observation. You just have to upload it from your computer. And yes, scat is definitely something that you can upload and it counts as evidence of animals. So make sure on your computer you can go into that observation and just add how was this identified, and yeah, it totally counts. And Haley is an all-star Sacramento observer, and she says a focus tip for autofocus devices like phones. Sometimes the camera may not want to focus on a small moving object like a plant or an insect. Yeah, if you kind of put your hand behind it, it helps your phone see a bigger object to focus on. So that is a really good tip. And it does depend on your phone to upload. So yeah, that's a great point. Brooke just reiterated for wherever you go to observe, if it's private property or sometimes even public property, you need special permits. So make sure that you get that information beforehand. Oh, Kathleen says putting a collected live insect on ice for a few minutes. Interesting. I guess it kind of stuns them a little bit because it's too cold, so they don't move around afterwards. But yeah, I've never tried that before.
One of the things we would do, kind of going back to the smartphone, to take plankton samples through a microscope is if you hold it perfectly above the eyepiece, it kind of has that circle view, which is kind of hard to ID from. If you zoom in just a little bit, it'll fill your whole screen, and from there you might be able to do a screenshot and zoom in better too. It also works through binoculars, but it makes it kind of hard to find what you're looking for. But if you guys are doing a microscope sample, that's another option to do as well, to zoom in.
Cool. This is great. Yeah, and yeah, if you have trouble with your phone sometimes focusing, that hand technique is really good, but also Cliff says if you zoom in slightly, that works a little bit as well. So these are all really great tips. Thank you for sharing. So I'll wrap that up and give it over to Elliot, who's gonna kind of take those photo taking tips and take it to the next level if you're thinking about having a Bioblitz.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Sarah. When Sarah and I were kind of talking about this, about our hosting a Bioblitz and some of the tips, every time I kind of came up with an idea, it reminded me of going back to my instructor days on Catalina Island and the pre-activity talk we would give our campers and our people. So a lot of you, again, this might be review. A lot of you are probably old pros at hosting a Bioblitz, but for some of us it might be the first time. So Sarah and I kind of compiled a quick list, and we'll go into a little bit more detail. So yeah, if you guys have something to share while I'm talking, by all means add it into the comments. We'll have a little bit of time at the end of this section too for people to comment as well. A short list that we're going to talk about is basics of interpretation, buddy system, iNaturalist accounts, have those ready to go. A couple of other options for KidFriendly, iNaturalist integration, some incentives, partnering with organizations and doing some outreach to get people at your Bioblitz, and then kind of going over a sample itinerary. So the basics of interpretation, really just leaning back on what we all do so well, which is getting out into nature and talking to people about nature. So if you are hosting an event, it's really important to introduce yourself and anyone else that's kind of co-hosting with you. It's also a really good idea to kind of give your background. We love it when people mention that they're naturalists, but you also probably have a lot of experience, especially if you are hosting this event on a site that you volunteer at or work at or have experience. So it gives you a lot of authority. It gives you a lot of credibility when you start talking about why you're there. And then defining your purpose is also very important. We're not just out here taking pictures of nature. This is going to research, or this is going for a specific project on site, or maybe this is your passion and this is what you want to collect. So defining your purpose. No reason for you to be on there. Sarah, I got muted just now. There we go. Contextualizing your observations. If you have observations that are site specific, maybe it's migration for bird season. Maybe you're checking out surf scoters or something like that. Maybe there is an endangered species that there's an ongoing project to kind of catalog the endangered species. The one that kind of jumped into our head was the clapper rail down here in Southern California. There's a handful of sites that have those on there. So it's always one of those observations. Keep your eyes open for the clapper rail. And if you see it, let us know. And it really gives a lot of context to the site too, and why it's important. Land acknowledgements. There is no template for land acknowledgements, but it's always important to recognize whose land we're on. Both tribal and also making sure that if there is special access granted to do observations, it might be worth mentioning the organization that you're working with as well. And expectations for the event. It's always great to have an itinerary, especially if you are moving location sites for observation. I'm sorry, if you're moving sites for observations, there might be a really good lookout for birds on one area. You might be moving to look for reptiles in another. So it's really great to have an itinerary talking about where you're going to meet, at what time, the best way to get there, and any kind of signage or resources to look out for, and possibly to bring along with you. Accessibility is really important to think about as well. If we are offering these Bioblitzes, letting people know what kind of trail to expect, what kind of conditions to expect once they're out there to do their observations. On the next slide, we will discuss the buddy system. Yeah, it's a great one. It's not just your basic buddy system for safety. That is obviously one of the main reasons for it, but it's also a really great opportunity for people to engage with each other on these observations. So you might pair someone who's really, really well versed in iNaturalist, how to upload, what criteria to upload, with someone who might not be as experienced. This helps get the other person up to speed. It's also great leadership training for people that are really well versed in iNaturalist. And also when we kind of dig a little bit deeper with our participants, we often find that we do have experts, formal or informal experts on subjects, and it's great to pair them with someone who's extra curious, someone who might be new at this, so that way they really get a deeper experience. And again, you guys probably know who those ones are the best. When we talk about making iNaturalist a little more kid-friendly, we're probably all really familiar with how iNaturalist works in the interface. It's not very exciting from the interactive standpoint. It's a very, I don't want to say cut and dry, but it's very an efficient interface. There is another kind of sub app called Seek, which has gamified iNaturalist. It's much more kid-friendly. It offers badges, it offers accomplishments and things like that, where if you're familiar with Pokemon Go or Ingress, it's kind of on the same bandwidth as that, where it's offering incentives for this kind of work. Yeah, with as far as iNaturalist goes, you can actually have an account, multiple people using the same account on different devices. And if you do have a young naturalist who's super interested, the minimum age is 13 for them to use on their own, with parental supervision. Again, if they have their own device and they want to log their own, by all means, that's at your and the parents' discretion. Other activities to think about while you are hosting a Bioblitz could be like having a passport or a nature journal or like a ranger journal, scavenger hunts, you know, measure a tree, go find a pine cone, observations, things like that. That just might be really fun and engaging for our younger naturalists that are participating in the event.
I'll just quickly add that if your participants choose to use Seek, they won't count towards the City Nature Challenge, but it will still keep them engaged in a different way. And if you do have one account for a family, that only counts as one user. And one of the ways that you measure if you win the City Nature Challenge is if you have a lot of different observers. So just something to keep in mind while you're planning to.
Thank you. For the projects, for the City Nature Challenge, you don't need to make a project unless you want it to be specific to the site that you're on or a specific event. So if you really want to capture the details of your specific Bioblitz and where it was carried out, you don't really need to. But if you look down on the left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see that when we add observations within this geofence down here within LA County, they will be automatically added to the City Nature Challenge. For other Bioblitzes throughout the year that aren't going to be under the City Nature Challenge umbrella, then you actually, if you want to capture that, then you definitely would need to make an iNaturalist project if you want to collect that data. But for the City Nature Challenge, any observation made between April 24th and April 27 within the geo boundary of your specific area will automatically be uploaded. And Sarah referenced the different cities that are participating this year. They will have the boundaries mapped out. So it's kind of on you to look at those boundaries and make sure that you're collecting within that area. For incentives for when you are hosting your Bioblitzes, obviously not necessary, but it's always fun to kind of come back and rally and see who got the most, or who had the most observations, or who had the most IDs or something like that. And this is really, you know, it's where your imagination takes you for it. We've seen people offering gift cards. We've seen people offering educational opportunities such as tours, different books or things like that, different materials they can hand out. An example, have a variety of categories to win at an announcement ahead of time. So if people are taking really cool pictures, you might want to have an opportunity for them to showcase those. You can, you know, maybe have an option where people who do the most observations, you know, maybe they get a fun little hat or something like that, or a sticker or a CalNat sticker, something fun like that. Other options. And yeah, our partner organizations. If you guys looked on that, if you noticed on that list that Sarah had earlier on, there are a large number of our existing and upcoming partner organizations that are hosting different events. So you can, if you are a partner organization and you want to host your own, you can definitely post that up there. We're trying to collect as much information about CalNat as possible regarding the City Nature Challenge. So you can sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. You can kind of see who's uploading different observations by looking at their bio on iNaturalist. A lot of people definitely put up that put up that certification on their naturalist bio on iNat. And also different partner organizations host their own annual Bioblitz. A lot of them are participating in the City Nature Challenge as well too.
And just also adding, if you partner with the organization you got your certification with, they have access to all the CalNat alumni that you can recruit from. So that is a really good place to draw from.
Yeah. And this is a quick itinerary, a sample itinerary for a Bioblitz. Getting there early to kind of prep for the day, putting up signs so people know where to meet and kind of a settling ground, so that way people can grab the itinerary and they can grab anything needed for the observations. Also, really good time to go over the safety talk and different facets of what they can expect from the Bioblitz. Introductions, like kind of we talked about before, introductions and the purpose and the plan for the day. If people feel like breaking into groups, if they feel like if you have different areas of observations that you want to hit and you want to kind of rotate them through, having people get assigned a group leader so they can go to those spots. And then from there, they kind of branch out and go off and observe. We can only expect so much time out of them, so you probably want to keep it a couple hours long, and then have them reconvene so that way we can go over IDs and observations, if you're providing snacks or lunch or something like that, or chatting with people that have kind of gone through this before, or any experts that you have on there. It would be kind of a good idea to have them kind of regroup so you can debrief and just collect some of the ideas that they experienced while they were doing their observations for the Bioblitz. So those of you that have hosted a Bioblitz before, those of you that have participated in the City Nature Challenge before, now's a great time to share any tips you guys have. You can go ahead and type them into the chat box. You can also go ahead and unmute yourself, and we can chat about them on air as well.
All right, I got one. I know locally we have had stations, and then people have gone through to each of the stations. So they've like kind of hung out in the area where there's like scorpions and spiders in the oak woodlands. And then they've gone on to talk to someone about birds in a better bird habitat area. And then I've manned for several years sort of a creek where we can like look under rocks and stuff like that. So sometimes that works better if you feel like you're going to have groups that are kind of coming through the day instead of like showing up at 8 in the morning, which from a organizational perspective, it'd be really nice if they all showed up at the same time. But what we've experienced is that doesn't happen. So that's one way we've gotten around that, is having, one leader at each station and then one leader to take new groups of people around after, in like 30-minute intervals or whatever. And we've had a nature journaling expert join us before, so they can actually do some sketching and drawing and learn about nature journaling. So it wasn't 100% Bioblitz related, but it was a little bit more accessible to families, which is who we were expecting.
Yeah, something similar to that. We had we did a Bioblitz for tide pools, and we had to obviously run it at low tide, but there's a lot to explore. So we had different similar concept where we had different stations, one right at the tide line, and different stations set up between the low tide line and all the way up to the high tide mark. And they were basically observing 1 foot areas, 1 foot square areas. So yeah, that's a really good observation, really good input, Brooke, that everyone doesn't have to show up on time in order to participate. There's definitely mechanisms to make sure everyone has a chance to participate. Anyone else have any other input?
I'll add to that passport ID idea earlier. So the Sacramento region is hoping, we don't know for sure yet, but we're hoping to organize a Bioblitz in the Davis Arboretum. So it's a lot of people who just happen to already be there and go through the spot, and we want to attract them to come and get involved. And so how we're hoping to do that is have some, like a little map and different stations that they can go to, and at each station, say we can have themes, right? So they get to look for a pond turtle at this one spot, and if they get it, they get a stamp. So those are a little more guided Bioblitzes, but those are really good for kind of a more casual participant or kids for sure.
Looking at the chat box, we have a couple of questions and a couple of observations too. Dan saying it's kind of hard to ID down to the species level. It brings up taxonomy as a concept. Yeah, that's I've heard a lot of input on that, whether it's better to keep digging and find the species, or if just getting the genus or even the family is good enough. And as far as research goes, it's you know, definitely kind of back and forth. I've heard pros and cons of both sides, but yeah, it's definitely difficult to to, if you don't know what you're looking at, to get a really solid name for it. So yeah, that's definitely one of the challenges we all face. Do we recommend, Patty saying, do we recommend having participants upload pictures as they go, or just take pics and upload them at the end? It's up to you. I've definitely found more success that when we take pictures as we go, when we come back together at the end of the event, that's when you can kind of host a mini ID party where people can kind of sit around and talk about their experience. You give people the opportunity to make not necessarily the same observation, but have similar experiences. So everyone kind of gets a really well-rounded experience, especially if you're having different stations to observe and things like that. So Sarah and Brooke might have input on this one too. But I typically see people uploading as they go to iNaturalist and then coming together at the end for kind of a little mini ID party.
Add to that, it does depend on your service and internet access. So if you are in a remote area, you might just have to take all the photos and upload them when you get to service or internet.
From Michelle, if I were to host a Bioblitz at our interpretive center in Temescal Valley for City Nature Challenge, what is the first basic step to get started? Oh boy. I'm definitely gonna have Sarah throw in on this one too. I would really start by looking at what goals you hope to accomplish with it. Like, do you have a specific area that you really want to kind of catalog what you're seeing there, and kind of start from there? And you know, maybe map out your area, and the City Nature Challenge just kind of adds in on that. But once the City Nature Challenge is also over, it kind of gives you something to go back to as well. And then a lot of it's, you know, kind of plan out what you're hoping to accomplish, and then start getting the word out, because you really want as many people to show up as possible. And you know, activating your network, talking to similar organizations, going to those organizations, dropping off flyers for your event. That way you get people to show up no matter what. So yeah, really plan out what your goals are going to be. What else? Sarah's probably going to have something to throw in on that too.
I think actually, like, those are all really good things, and backing it up even further, basic step would be, is your city, are you already in a city boundary? So I think, Elliot, help me out on my Southern California geography. Is this in Los Angeles County?
No, Temescal is going to be Inland Empire. So San Bernardino and Riverside counties, which they actually do have a City Nature Challenge going on there. So Temescal Valley, I do believe, would be caught in that umbrella.
Yeah, so find your city organizers and let them know you want to do a Bioblitz. That's your first step.
There you go. That's the first step.
And I would say the next step might be putting out a call for an organizing call or meeting, and talking to the content experts in your area, and just getting on the page who's going to do what. So I know in Ukiah we are planning a Bioblitz, and we contacted CMPS and Audubon and the California Naturalist and the RCD, just to make sure that everybody that wanted to participate was at the table, and then we are deciding on, you know, our different stations and going from there. So making sure we have the content experts we want in our local area.
Mm-hmm. where can I find a list of partner organizations in San Diego? Brooke or Sarah might be able to look online really quick and find on the City Nature Challenge website. I think they have a list of people of different organizations by city. So kind of, yeah, San Diego is one of the cities participating. So there's going to be a web page that will get to you in the chat box that will have that information. Off the top of my head, the challenge in the Orange County, there is Costa Mesa City is having is participating in the City Nature Challenge. I'm not sure off the top of my head which organizations are carrying out a Bioblitz, but again, that's going to be on the website, and we'll look for that link and send it to you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the excellent feedback on there, the next chat. Anything else? Anyone else want to pop in any other information?
Oh, Julie asked a last minute question here.
Oh, there we go. If you don't want to do a guided BioBlitz, for example, stations, how do you divide up areas so that there's not over counting of organisms? And also, how do you keep it legal, ethical? Should we be requiring all observations to be made from the trail? For example, if we are on public land, and obsequious, and obviously the landowner may be a partner already, but if not, permits may be required. Yes, that's definitely a lot to keep in mind. Obviously, the less that we are intruding in on nature, the better. There was a comment earlier on about using nets to capture butterflies to ID. The less we can disturb, the better. The more natural your observations can be, the better. However, if we are going for an accurate count, especially when it comes to things like that, the less we can disturb, the better. But there are, we're not recommending you go out there and capture things and take pictures of them, but we do understand that there are things to keep in mind. So, yeah, I think it comes down to knowing your site and knowing the flora and fauna and the regulations, especially if permits are required. If there's any doubt in your mind, then the answer would be no. So it's really important to know that your site that you're observing on, and if there is any question, then default to probably stay on the trail.
All righty. So we're coming up to time here, and I just wanted to wrap it up. Thank you, Elliot, and thank you everybody who was here on the webinar today. So what's going to happen is I will be sending out a follow-up email just with the link to watch this webinar if you need reference, and it'll also have a link for you to go to if you are hosting a Bioblitz, to input your information and send it to us. So that way we have it on file and we can share it with other naturalists and help you in that way get the word out. And then finally, after the City Nature Challenge is over, we're gonna send out some things to have you guys let us know how you participated in the City Nature Challenge, and that way we can come out and say, hurrah, we had this many naturalists and they contributed this many people, this many observations, I mean. So that, look out for that. And if you have any questions or want to kind of go through any of the details with me, I'm always available. You can email or call me. Calling is much nicer and fun. So either one works though. And we thank you again for coming, and thank you so much for all your efforts and service to nature. We are amazed at the work that our California Naturalists do. So we'll stick around for any questions, but that's it. Thank you.